In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
Let's talk college football. It's time for the Sports Page Summer of College Football, presented by Buddy Gregg RVs and Motorhomes, our daily preview of teams and conferences around the country for the upcoming college football season. Find Buddy Gregg RVs and Motorhomes on their Facebook page, their website at buddygregg.com, and follow them on Twitter at BuddyGreggRVs. Now let's take a look at the Auburn Tigers.
To help us break down the Auburn Tigers, we bring in from AL.com, Joel Erickson joins us here on the News Sentinel Sports Page. Hey, Joel, Vince, and Brendan. How you doing, Joel?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
We're good. Appreciate it. So the good, hard-nosed football is what Gus Malzahn wants to play. Is he going to have the same type of fast-paced offense that he had as the offense coordinator there at Auburn?
Yep, it's the same. It's the same scheme. He can say it's hard nosed too, because they in the 3 years he was at Auburn as an offensive coordinator, they ran the ball more than 60% of the time. In every season, that going as high as 69% one year. So that's kind of where the hard nosed thing comes from.
It helps when you have Cam Newton, which he does not this time, but. So talk about the quarterback situation. A lot of focus on Kyle Frazier, Jonathan Wallace, and some new guys coming in the fall. Is it a wide open competition beyond those two guys? Is there a front runner? Talk about the quarterbacks.
No, there's not really a front runner, and for some fans that's a little bit, I guess, worrisome. But it's kind of how Malzahn operates. He never really had his first year at Auburn, he didn't have Chris Todd available until the fall anyway, and then Chris Todd comes in and breaks the school record for touchdown passes. So, until they get everybody in the fall and see Nick Marshall and Jeremy Johnson, I think the coaching staff is kind of just operating as if this is the way it just makes sense.
Joel, before I hit you with my question, I think everyone needs to follow Joel on Twitter. It's at Joel A. Erickson AU. Only because, Joel, I think you have the single best Twitter picture of anyone, of any beat writer in the country. For anyone, can you describe what's going on there for us, please?
It was an Auburn Alabama basketball game, and Cam Newton showed up about halftime and decides to he grabbed a megaphone, a cheerleader's megaphone, and parked himself in the student section, and we sit right in front of the student section there at Auburn Arena, and during one of the timeouts, Cam decided to start buzzing the press corps, and so I kind of realized, all of a sudden I heard this gigantic noise in my ear, and I kind of realized what it is, and I kind of realized it was Cam, and kind of looked up, and our photographer happened to be paying attention to it and snapped that picture. And,
nailed it. It's a phenomenal picture.
There's another one. There's another one of the writer next to me. Somebody else snapped from across the way a screenshot that's almost even better, because Philip didn't quite realize who it was and started to get a little bit upset.
I hadn't zoomed in on that photo. Brendan is right. That is absolutely phenomenal. Well done.
All right, Joe.
I've been told I'm not allowed to change that ever.
No, don't. All right, Joel. So you're talking about the hard-nosed stuff. Obviously, the passing game was atrocious last year. Running game, from everything I've read, it looks like they're coming back. It's going to be the focal point again. Touch on the running game and tell me about this kid. I've read about this the JUCO transfer, Cameron Artis-Payne.
The running game. I will say this, because there's a little bit of uncertainty at quarterback, it makes it even more likely that they're going to run the ball, 60% of the time, maybe even in mid 60% of the time. Obviously, Trey Mason coming back, he's a guy who ran for 1,000 yards last year. They've got some stuff they can do with him. Cameron Artis-Payne, though, really kind of stole A-Day from everybody else. He's a like you said, he's a JUCO kid. He's an older JUCO kid. He took a couple of years off before he got back into football. So he's either 23 or 24 now. But he's a bigger guy. He's 210 pounds. By the time the season starts, he may be 215 or so. And that kind of fits the inside zone, role that Auburn has had in the past. Now they've got some other running backs coming in. They've got a freshman coming in named Peyton Barber, who's probably going to weigh about 220, and then they've got a speedier kid that could go around the edge. But the coaching staff seems pretty happy with what they've got at running back.
Visiting with Joel Erickson from AL.com, covers the Auburn Tigers, helping us out with our Sports Page Summer College Football Preview today, focusing on Auburn. I'm Vince Ferrara along with Brendan Quinn. Talk about the wide receivers. There's a lot of questions over there, a couple guys with some experience, but talk about the receiving corps.
Well, at the end of the spring, the offensive coordinator, Rhett Lashley, said that was a position that they really needed some people to step forward. And it's not real surprising. Last year, Emory Blake had more catches than really the rest of the wide receivers combined, and he's gone now. So, they've got a couple guys in Sammy Coates and Ricardo Lewis who are very, very fast and big, and they think that they can do some stuff and had pretty decent performances during the spring game. But they're going to need them to be a little bit more consistent. Coates with his hands, he tends to drop the easy ones, and Lewis just kind of needs to learn a little bit more about route running. He didn't get to play very much last year as a freshman.
Yeah, how just stick with the offense before I guess jumping over to the defensive side in terms of a new system coming back. It's a new system, but it's an old system. What's the dynamic of guys picking up, what Gus is trying to do and balance that with a lack of talent, in certain spots, and trying to just kind of put all the pieces together and just clean up what was kind of a messy situation of, all the way around offensively.
Well, for a lot of guys who were there before, picking up the offense was pretty easy. Mason was hurt a lot during the spring, and unlike some other players who were trying to learn a new system on the defensive side of the ball, the coaching staff said they really weren't that worried about it because Mason already knew what he was doing in the offense from day one. Some of the younger guys, though, it can be a big transition, especially at wide receiver, because Malzahn's offense leaves absolutely no room for variation. Every route has to be run exactly the same way every time. You have to be lined up exactly. He's a stickler for details like where people line up and how wide their splits are and things like that. And with the receivers especially, I remember during the spring they said that it was a little bit tough because last year's offense they could adjust some routes and it wasn't as big a deal exactly where they lined up. So they kind of had, I think for most of the receivers it probably took half the spring before they kind of figured out exactly what Malzahn wanted out of them.
Talk about the offensive line. Looks like they're on paper. There's 4 returning starters. Is that sort of the strength of the offense?
We'll see. It's a group that has a lot of talent. As you mentioned, there's a lot of experience. They've got some guys who were very, very young last year, and they had freshmen starting at the tackles. They had sophomores starting at the guards. They've got some younger guys. But if they start to get a boost from their experience, last year they went into the season with less than 35 starts across the line. This year they could go in as many as 70. If they start to get some experience and kind of play up to where they were recruited, they have a chance to be really good.
Talk about the defensive line. Not only are there some returning starters there, but in the short time that Gus Malzahn, the staff, came in recruiting and putting together that 2013 class, they're able to get some big-time defensive linemen, as you well know, one of which Tennessee was in the mix for down the end, Carl Lawson, Montrevious Adams, and others. Talk about that set of defensive linemen and how much some of the newcomers on the D-line might be able to contribute early.
Well, the leader's D Ford. He's the leading returning sack guy. He had 6 sacks last year and really missed 4 games with an abdominal injury. So he's kind of the front runner. He's kind of the guy who's going to be the bellwether for that. And really, he's kind of the bellwether for the defensive side of the team. The defensive tackles really they need to. They're deep there, and Adams may redshirt because of that. But they're a bunch of guys who played a lot, but really need to get more production. And then, as far as Lawson goes, he's got a chance to play right away. He's at the other defensive end. They like the 2 guys they have there, Ken Carter and Nosa Igwe, but they're not really pass rush guys. They're not quick twitch guys. And Ellis Johnson puts a premium on that. So at the end of the spring, he said, the young guys are going to have a chance right away, and obviously that means Lawson. I think most people know, especially up in Tennessee, that he was rated a top 5 player in the country by a couple of recruiting services, and he's probably going to get a chance to play, especially in pass rush situations, right away.
Yeah, with the new coordinator, Joel, Ellis Johnson, who kind of washed out at Southern Miss, but is pretty respected defensively as a coordinator. Coming in, what's kind of the balance between he and Gus? How do you kind of see it? Is it very much, build a wall, one's on offense, one's on defense, or how much of a unit is it?
I think Gus pays attention to the defense from a personnel standpoint, or at least he did during the spring. But he's made it pretty clear that he's basically letting Johnson handle the defense. We actually asked, you mentioned Southern Miss, we actually asked Ellis a couple times about, flaming out at Southern Miss and going 0-12 last year. He kind of chuckled and said that, some people are better as coordinators than they are as coaches. So I think he feels more comfortable. He said he feels more comfortable, more relaxed for the defensive coordinator's spot, which that was interesting to me. I guess I hadn't considered that, the head coaching job would be that much different from what you're doing as a defensive coordinator.
Joe, what's your opinion of this staff in terms of on the field, in terms of X's and O's with this team? They've shown that they have some terrific recruiters, and a lot of the attention has been on the recruiters. But what kind of coaches do you think they are in terms of on the field and in game?
Well, Malzahn and Johnson obviously are very highly regarded. Malzahn, when he was a coordinator, won the Frank Broyles Award as a top assistant, and they've got some other guys kind of sprinkled in there. Rhett Lashley is the guy that the offensive coordinator is a guy that was brought up with Malzahn's system and knows it like the back of his hand. On defense, Melvin Smith is a guy who, at cornerbacks, who really kind of built his reputation around developing cornerbacks and turning them into NFL players. So Malzahn if you asked the same question to Malzahn, he would tell you that the goal was to get guys who could both recruit and coach. And obviously they've got some recruiting momentum and done some big things, and we'll see whether or not the coaching stuff clicks in, I guess, starting in the fall.
So what's Johnson's kind of impression been of the defense that he inherited? What's kind of been his, all right, this is what we got going for us, and this is what we got to address, immediately? Well,
I think he told us basically straight out the other day, or during the spring, that tackling surprised him. That Auburn's tackling was poor enough that it surprised him at how bad it was. And that was a big time emphasis of the spring for him.
Just tell him to watch some Tennessee game film from last year if he wants to feel a little better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Auburn fans would tell you, why didn't he look at game film from the last 4 years, really? So tackling was a big thing. He feels good. I think they felt good about cornerback and defensive tackle, and to some degree defensive end coming out of the spring, with the exception of that one pass rush spot. Linebacker, they've got a lot of guys for the 2 spots, but I don't think he feels quite yet like he's got guys who he can put in there and just kind of let go. And safety had some depth issues. So I think for him going in, linebacker and safety are the big thing, and then tackling. Even at the end of the spring, he said that there were a couple guys who really performed well tackling, but they needed to get better in terms of bringing people down.
Previewing the Auburn Tigers in 2013 with Joel Erickson from AL.com. Joel, I got to tell you, I am shocked that to this point, my co-host Brendan Quinn has not asked you mentioned linebackers, has not asked you about one of the great names in college football, Casanova McKenzie. How, Brendan?
Play on, player.
How much play is there on his name? How much does he get asked about that?
Well, his name is I think you get so much they get so much coverage with the recruiting. I think his name was talked about a lot last year.
Right.
Or was talked about when he was in the recruiting process. He's also the guy. he's also a guy who said, I think kind of in an offhanded way, that he picked Auburn over Clemson because there was a Chick-fil-A on campus.
That's right. I forgot about that. Awesome.
So there's that going with it too. There's Casanova McKenzie, and then there's the Chick-fil-A stuff, and it'll make Brendan happy though. He came out of spring as the starter at weak side linebacker. So maybe there might be a lot of Casanova when Auburn comes up to Tennessee.
Outstanding. I'm really looking forward to also seeing Lothario Jones and Gigolo Williams. So
real quick, hit on the linebacking group, and then also the secondary, and then special teams real quick.
Linebacker, they've got a guy coming back in Jake Holland who's experienced but did not come out of the spring as a starter, mainly because he's got some stuff to do athletically, but more because he missed several practices due to a class, and Johnson was pretty clear that he missed enough practices that the other guys kind of got ahead of him. So they've got young guys there. Chris Frost and Casanova McKenzie are both sophomores, and they'll be challenged, but they like their athleticism. In the secondary, they thought the cornerbacks had a better spring than just about any position group on the entire team. They've got a lot of experience there. Jonathan Mincy and Chris Davis, the starters, are back as guys who have been starting for a couple of years now, and then they've got guys who played a lot last year behind them. At safety, they felt so deep at corner that they moved Josh Holsey, a sophomore and probably their third best corner, to strong safety at the end. I'm not sure if that's going to stick. They've got some guys coming in that they want to see, but they feel like they've got some depth issues at safety and some tackling issues there that they've got to address before the season starts. And then in special teams, really, you'd be hard pressed to go into a season with a more solid kicking game than having. They've got two guys, Cody Parkey at kicker and Stephen Clark at punter, who've both been around for a long time and performed very solidly. So I think the kicking game is something that they can bank on going into the season.
Joel, real quick, last thing, we got maybe 30 seconds, but you wrote about how the schedule sets up for Auburn. What do you think about the schedule, and give me a win range for this team?
Well, they're non-conference. There's no real tests, like huge tests there. Everybody's at home. Probably the best test there is Arkansas State. I think that they'll probably be fine there. Being able to have two of their road games go against other coaches who are in their first year, I think that definitely helps. And then both Mississippi schools, and then both Georgia and Alabama coming in, I think, to home. Probably the schedule sets up as good as it can when you play in the SEC. I think in terms of a win range, I've been saying I expect them to get back to a bowl, so probably between 6 and 8.
Interesting. Joe, looking forward to seeing you when Auburn plays at Tennessee November 9th up here at Neyland Stadium. You can follow Joel and see his absolutely fantastic photo on his Twitter account. It's Joel A. Erickson, ERICKSONAU on Twitter. Joel, great to talk to you. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the time, and have a great 4th.
Okay, we'll see you guys.